We hear a lot about influencers these days, but long before any of that, there was the original influencer, the one that shaped everything: geography. For ancient peoples like the Egyptians, the Kushites, and those in Canaan, the map wasn't just a backdrop. No, it was the single most powerful force in their lives, dictating their chances of survival, their culture, their entire destiny.
But seriously, let's just stop and think about that for a second. If it was all on you, if you had to build a society from the ground up, what's your first move? What's the one thing you absolutely, positively have to even get started? This wasn't just some fun thought experiment. For the first humans, this was the life or death question.
And the answer to that very question is what sent three ancient groups, the Egyptians, the Kushites, and the Israelites in Canaan, down wildly different roads. The choices their geography forced on them didn't just last for a season. They ended up defining who they were for thousands of years. So, here's our game plan for this explainer. First, we'll look at what I call the civilization starter pack. Then we'll see how that played out in Egypt with the gift of the Nile. We'll contrast that with a totally different story in Canaan. And finally, we'll tie it all together to see why the map really is destiny.
Okay, so every single successful ancient society needed what I'm calling the civilization starter pack. And it's not super complicated. It really just boils down to three key environmental factors that are absolute must-haves if you want to make it.
First up, the big one, the absolute deal breaker: water. And it's for so much more than just drinking. It's your grocery store, full of fish. It's your entire farming operation, watering your crops. And in a world with no roads, it's your main highway for travel and trade. Bottom line, no fresh water, game over. Your civilization is done before it even starts.
Next on the list is topography, which is really just a fancy word for the shape of the land. I mean, think about it. Are you trying to farm on the side of a steep, rocky mountain? Or do you have these beautiful, wide-open, flat river valleys that are just begging for you to plant some crops? The land itself kind of tells you, hey, settle here, or you might want to keep moving.
And finally, you need useful vegetation. And listen, I'm not just talking about stuff you can eat. The plants around you were basically your ancient hardware store and your pharmacy rolled into one. You need reeds to build boats and baskets, strong fibers to make rope, and other plants for medicine. It was all right there, if you settled in the right spot.
So there you have it: water, land, and plants. That's the simple checklist that separates a group that's just passing through from a civilization that's there to stay. Now that we have the blueprint, let's see it in action.
So let's head to our first case study, the civilizations of Egypt and Kush. Now these folks didn't just get the basic starter pack, oh no. They got the deluxe Platinum Edition all-inclusive version. And it was all thanks to one incredible, magnificent geographical feature.
Just try to wrap your head around that number for a second. Over 4,000 miles long, the Nile wasn't just a river. It was a massive, life-giving artery, pumping water and life through thousands of miles of what was otherwise a bone-dry desert.
And the visual is just incredible. You've got this lush green ribbon of life, and on either side, as far as you can see, nothing but harsh, scorching desert. But those deserts actually did them a favor. They acted like a giant natural wall, protecting the valley from most invaders.
But here's the Nile's secret weapon, the thing that made it truly special. Its annual flood was predictable. You could practically set a calendar to it. And when the floodwaters receded, they left behind this incredible gift: a fresh layer of dark, rich mud called silt. It's basically nature's perfect fertilizer, delivered to your doorstep for free every single year.
It was a flawless system. The Nile ticked every single box on our starter pack list, and then some. And when you have that much food, it changes everything. Not everyone has to be a farmer anymore. You get people specializing as scribes, priests, engineers. You get the manpower to build pyramids. You need a government to manage the whole thing. The Nile wasn't just a good place to live, it was the perfect recipe for a powerful, permanent empire.
Okay, so that's what happens when you hit the geographical jackpot. But what if you don't? What if the land doesn't just hand you everything on a silver platter? For that, we're going to head northeast to Canaan, where the ancient Israelites were dealt a completely different hand.
And this comparison really tells the whole story. The main river in Canaan, the Jordan, was just no Nile, not even close. The floods weren't regular, you didn't get that same wide, super fertile layer of silt, and that one single difference fundamentally altered the kind of society that could ever hope to grow there.
And on top of that, the land itself was just a lot more challenging. Instead of one big, flat valley, Canaan was a patchwork of plains, hills, and mountains. Trying to set up massive centralized farms like they had in Egypt? Yeah, that just wasn't going to happen here.
So, if the land won't let you settle down and be a farmer, what's plan B? You become a herder. The geography of Canaan couldn't support giant fields of grain, but it did have enough pockets of grassland for flocks of sheep and goats. This forced a nomadic lifestyle, always on the move, which created a completely different culture. It wasn't about building giant monuments. It was about being resilient, about tight-knit family tribes, and about survival that depended on constantly searching for the next green pasture.
Okay, so let's pull all this together. By looking at these two very different places with two very different outcomes, we can see exactly why the map matters so much. It's not just the setting for the story. In many ways, it's the main character.
I mean, this chart lays it out perfectly, doesn't it? For Egypt and Kush, you had predictable water and flat land, which led directly to a settled farming civilization. Over in Canaan, less reliable water and hilly terrain led to a nomadic herding society. You start with two different geographical blueprints, you get two profoundly different results.
And this right here is the biggest takeaway of all. Geography wasn't a passive background, it was an active force. It was the thing that determined whether you lived in a tent or built pyramids. It decided whether your life revolved around a predictable annual flood or the constant search for grazing land. The land wasn't just the stage, it was the director of the whole show.
Which kind of leaves us with one last big question. Today we've got satellites and global shipping and the internet. We feel like we've conquered geography. But have we really? How much of our modern world, the locations of our biggest cities, our global trade routes, even our political conflicts, is still being quietly shaped by these same ancient rules of the map? It seems like geography might just be the one influencer that never goes out of style.